And we are back. Welcome to my preview and predictions for Game Week 7 in the Premier League, our final round of Premier League fixtures before the international break. I want to start today's video by just saying a massive thank you again to all of you guys. September has ended up being the best month in my channel's history. More views, more interactions than we've ever had before. We broke through 12,000 subscribers and then even 13,000 subscribers this week. So unbelievable how much you guys have been getting involved in the channel over the course of the last few weeks since the start of the new season. A massive thank you to all of you. If you missed today's earlier video, which was my La Liga previews and predictions, you can check that one out at the top of your screen right now. And of course, we're going into an international break now, which means once again, we're going to be posting daily throughout the international break, covering every single match of the World Cup qualifiers from a European perspective, which means once again, as always, you guys can head over to our community page and start having your say on those matches. I'm going to gradually post them over the course of the next probably like 48 hours. I don't want to put them all in there at once because then some get lost in the shuffle. So we'll gradually space them out over the course of the next 48 hours. Make sure you click the link in the description or the pinned comment in this video so you can have your say on every match over the course of the international break. And of course, as always, if you haven't done so already, please do consider dropping a like on this video, sharing it with a friend, subscribing with notifications turned on so you don't miss out on all the content we've got coming up for you over the course of the international break. And if you still want even more, don't forget to hit that join button to become a member of the channel, just like these two people did last week. They now have access to all of my thoughts on Ligue 1, the Bundesliga, and Serie A for this week. And you guys can do that as well by becoming a member of the SO99 channel. Right, that is enough admin. These are the 10 matches taking place in the Premier League this weekend. And we have a game tonight. So, fantasy football fans, this is your warning. The first game of the Premier League weekend is tonight, so get your fantasy football teams done. Otherwise, you're going to miss the deadline and you're going to be stuck with the same team you had last week. Let's get on with that game then. It is the opening game of the weekend. It is tonight's fixture, and it is Bournemouth taking on Fulham. Bournemouth coming into this match 4 games unbeaten, although it should be noted they have drawn their last 2, needing a 93rd minute equaliser last week to get a point at Leeds. For Fulham, they went ahead early against Aston Villa at Villa Park, but were on the receiving end on what was a resurgent Aston Villa on the day, losing 3-2 in the end. In terms of the team news coming into this one, there's no fresh concerns for Bournemouth, although Cook and Smith remain out for them. For Fulham, there is big worries surrounding the striker situation at the moment. Muniz missed last week's loss to Villa. Raul Jimenez started, but then had to go off injured himself just a few minutes into the game, which meant Adama Traore played up front in that match. As things stand, both Muniz and Jimenez are major doubts for the game tonight. But Muniz has just signed a new deal, so maybe he's in a little bit of a better mood because he would have had to pass some sort of minor medical, I'm sure. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made that new offer to him. I don't know if they're going to make it. We shall see what the lineups are come 8 o'clock this evening. In terms of the head-to-head record, it was a 1-0 victory for Bournemouth on this ground last season. It was a 2-2 draw at Craven Cottage. I'd be more inclined to lean more towards that sort of scoreline when it comes to this one tonight. I do think both sides are on good goal-scoring form at the moment. Could see it going either way, but as things stand, I've got to have Bournemouth as the favourites for this one. And I'm going for a 2-1 victory to the home side. On to Saturday then, and the lunchtime kickoff is a very interesting one as we have Leeds taking on Spurs. For Leeds, as we just mentioned, they were on the receiving end of Bournemouth's late equaliser, which actually means they only have 1 win from their last 6 matches, although to be fair to them, 3 of them have been draws. Spurs are unbeaten in their last 6. However, all of their last 3 matches have been draws. It's been a tough couple of weeks for Thomas Frank's side, needing to come back from 2-0 down to draw with Brighton, then needing a last-minute equaliser to draw at home to Wolves in the Premier League last week, and then once again coming from 2-0 down to get a draw in Europe in midweek, drawing 2-2 with Bodo Glimt, although it should be noted that Bodo also missed a penalty in that match, and Spurs were arguably very lucky to come away with a point in that match. In terms of the team news for this one, for Leeds, there is still no goalkeeper Perry, and there is still no Willy Gnonto. For Spurs, Sergio Romero is the latest to pick up an injury for them. He is joining the likes of Maddison, Solanke, Kulusevski, and Kolo Muani, all currently missing for Spurs at the moment. To be fair to Tottenham, though, they do have a good record against Leeds, scoring 4 in each of their last 2 visits to Elland Road, 4-1 and 4-0 respectively. That was a couple of seasons ago, though, and Leeds are a much more resilient side since getting back promoted to the Premier League for this season. Ultimately, I do think that Spurs should be considered the favourites for this match, but Leeds are doing all right at the moment. It's been a rough couple of weeks for Spurs, so even though I think Spurs should win, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. On to the 3 o'clocks, and the next one, or the first one, should I say, sees Arsenal taking on West Ham, second taking on 19th. However, it should absolutely be noted that the head-to-head record between these two sides is absolutely bizarre. In the last 2 seasons, going to the London Stadium, Arsenal have won 6-0 and Arsenal have won 5-2. In West Ham's last 2 visits to the Emirates, which is what we've got to talk about in this game, they have won 2-0 and they have won 1-0. So Arsenal haven't even scored at home to West Ham in the last 2 seasons. So for those of you thinking this is going to be another easy win for Arsenal, I would just say tread carefully. That being said, Arsenal did get over one of their other hoodoos at the moment, beating Newcastle away thanks to Gabriel's last-minute winner, and they backed it up with a victory over Olympiacos in midweek. West Ham, on the other hand, with new man in charge, Nuno Espirito Santo, got off to what, in my opinion, is a very good start, drawing away at Everton in their first game on the Monday Night Football. In terms of the team news for this one, it was yet another day of disappointment for Arsenal in terms of injuries in midweek, with both Martinelli and arguably a lot more crucially, Gabriel going off with injuries on Wednesday night. As things stand, it's unclear if either of them are going to make it for this match. For West Ham, Thomas Souček serves the final game of his suspension, but other than that, they have no fresh injury concerns coming into it. Naturally, you do have to still consider Arsenal the favourites for this match. They're on much better form. They're playing some really good stuff this season. But just be aware of that West Ham record on this ground. Would not surprise me to see West Ham pull off another shock in this one. But a shock it would still be. I'm going for a 2-0 victory to Arsenal. Next up in the 3 o'clock kickoffs, the only other 3 o'clock kickoff this week, it is Manchester United taking on Sunderland. And very worryingly, we've just spoken about the potential of a shock result if West Ham go to Arsenal and get the victory. At this point in time, I don't think it would be a surprise if newly promoted Sunderland went to Old Trafford and got a result and beat Manchester United. And I'm saying this as a Manchester United fan. That's how crazy it's been since the international break. Bear in mind that at this end of the last international break, I sat here confident Manchester United were going to go to Man City and win. Now, just 3 weeks later, I'm concerned we're not even going to get a result at home to Sunderland. But you have to give credit to Sunderland. They're on a great run of form. They're 5th in the Premier League. They're 5 games unbeaten. Yet another win and yet another clean sheet for them last week. Away to Nottingham Forest. Although, let's be honest, the circumstances surrounding their goal was highly controversial. And Nottingham Forest had enough chances to get level in that game, but fumbled in front of goal on multiple occasions. For Manchester United, though, it was an absolute shocker at Brentford last week. A dismal of a performance. 3-1. I don't want to take anything away from Brentford. They were absolutely fantastic. But a 3-1 defeat for Manchester United again. Yet again failing to capitalise on a good performance against Chelsea the previous week. And it does mean going into this game, you can't have any confidence in a Manchester United result. In terms of the team news, there is no fresh concerns for Manchester United, but Casemiro is going to be back from suspension after serving his 1-game ban last week. No fresh concerns for Sunderland either, but Reinildo remains suspended after his straight red card a couple of weekends ago. Honestly, I just don't know. Player for player, I genuinely believe Manchester United should win this comfortably, but comfortably is just not something Manchester United do at the moment. I think Sunderland have more than a chance of getting a result here, but I still have to back my side, especially at home to a newly promoted team. If they fail to win, this might be Ruben Amorim's last game in charge, but we shall see. I'm going for 2-1 to Manchester United. I hope and I pray that I'm right. On to the 5:30 kickoff, and this is arguably the biggest game of the weekend, if not by far the biggest game of the weekend. It is Chelsea taking on Liverpool. Chelsea finally getting their first win in a major competition for a little while in midweek, although they still have to do it with 10 men. Yet another red card for them against Benfica. And if we're being honest, they were a little bit lucky with how they won the game with the bizarre own goal, which gave them the 1-0 victory. But that is still coming into this game off the back of 3 games without a win in the league. For the league leaders, Liverpool, it is back-to-back defeats for them. The bubble has finally burst as they lost to Palace last week in the league and then lost once again to Galatasaray in midweek. And they now come into this game making it 3 away games in a row. They desperately need to make it back to Anfield in order to get themselves back on form, I feel. Obviously, they will be at Anfield after the international break. What could be interesting here is that they've been top of the league all season long. If Arsenal do beat West Ham as expected, Liverpool will not be top of the league coming into the kickoff of this fixture. So who knows? Maybe that could play some sort of part in it. In terms of the team news, there are big concerns for both sides. Chelsea seriously struggling with centre-back options. Chalobah is suspended after his red card. Fofana, Colwill and Tosin Adarabioyo are all out injured. So realistically, they are down to just Badiashile, Hato and Achapong as outright centre-back options, none of which have really proven themselves so far in the Premier League. For Liverpool, the big news for them is that Alisson is injured. He is not going to be back until after the international break. But if only they had someone like Marmadashvili as the backup that could fill in for them. In terms of the head-to-head record, Chelsea are actually unbeaten in the last 5 seasons at Stamford Bridge against Liverpool. But I do fear that with their centre-back crisis mounting, Liverpool are likely to get the result here. I do have Liverpool as the favourites for this match, but I just don't know. I think Liverpool should win it, but I'm actually going to go for a 2-2 draw. I don't think there's much in this game. Chelsea, as I say, have that great record against Liverpool at home. Let's see if they can continue it in this fixture. On to Sunday then, where I actually think, is this the first time ever we've had more fixtures on a Sunday than a Saturday when it's not been literally the last week of the season? We've got 5 matches on Sunday after only 4 matches on Saturday. The first of those, or the first of 4 2 o'clock kickoffs, should I say, sees Aston Villa taking on Burnley. It is 16th versus 18th, but the form of these two sides are very contrasting coming into this game. It's been a real decent turnaround for Aston Villa over the last 7 days, winning in the Europa League against Bologna, then beating Fulham at home in the league, and then winning again last night back in the Europa League away to Feyenoord 2-0. Really good 7 days for Villa. For Burnley, it's not been great. 5 games without a win, 4 defeats in those 5 matches. They've also lost every single away game so far this season. So not a good look for Burnley. The only good news for them is they have no fresh injury concerns coming into this one. For Aston Villa, looks like there's not going to be a return for Tyrone Mings or Yuri Tielemans until after the international break. But they had a couple of players come back and play well last night as well. So they should be in a good spot coming into this one. To Burnley's credit, they have actually been scoring a fair few goals over the last few weeks, but I actually think that has been at the expense of their defensive record. You think of how they got into the Premier League, building off of their really solid defensive record. It's not happened for them over the past few weeks, but I'm going to have their attacking side coming into this in terms of my prediction. I was tempted to go for 2-0, but I'm actually going to go for a 3-1 win for Aston Villa. Whilst that game is going on, you've got Everton taking on Crystal Palace, and I do think this is one of the harder ones to call this week. Everton are actually now 4 games without a win, having drawn at home on Monday night to West Ham. For Palace, they are now 19 games unbeaten in all competitions. 3 wins, 3 draws in the Premier League so far this season. They won against Liverpool last week, and they also won 2-0 against Dynamo Kiev last night in the Conference League. So Palace certainly the side on the better form coming into this, but Everton have a very strong home record in their new ground so far. In terms of the team news, Shrewsbury Hall becomes the first player to be suspended for 5 yellow cards so far this season after just 6 matches. But what's most impressive is he's done it 5 weeks in a row. Game week 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yellow cards in all 5, so Shrewsbury Hall is suspended. For Crystal Palace, interestingly, Jean-Philippe Mateta was taken off at half-time last night. But as things stand, he is expected to be fit for this game. And he'll want to play because he's just been called up for the French national team for the first time. So he'll want to make sure he proves his fitness ahead of playing for them. In terms of the head-to-head record between these two sides, it is very much in favour of the home side. Everton are unbeaten in their last 9 matches against Crystal Palace, winning 6. So you cannot rule Everton out here. I know a lot of people are going to have Crystal Palace as the favourites for this match. after the week that they've had. But honestly, I expect that unbeaten run to continue here. I think Everton are going to get something from this match. I don't think they're going to get the win, but I do think we're going to have a nice little draw here. I'm going to go for a 1-1 for Everton and Crystal Palace. Third of our 2 o'clock games sees Newcastle taking on Nottingham Forest. Two teams seriously out of form in terms of their league form, it has to be said. For Newcastle, it's only 1 win in their first 6 Premier League games, although it has to be noted that they were very, very good against Arsenal before throwing it away in the last 10 minutes of the match. They also bounced back from that disappointment with an outstanding performance in Belgium in the Champions League in midweek, winning 4-0 away at Union Saint-Gilloise, who, let's not forget, beat Monaco 4-1 the previous week before then drawing with City. So really, really good result for Newcastle in midweek. Sort of momentum builder they can have coming into this game. For Nottingham Forest, it is absolute dire straits at the moment. No wins in their last 8. They lost at home to Sunderland in the Premier League last weekend. Then they lost at home again last night in the Europa League to FC Midtjylland. I went for a 2-2 draw, ended up 3-2. So I'll take my prediction for that one. But it ended up with the fans chanting, "You're getting sacked in the morning," at new manager Ange Postecoglou. The supporters are not happy. Will Marinakis make a decision ahead of this game being played on Sunday? We shall see, but it's really, really poor for Nottingham Forest coming into this game. In terms of the head-to-head record, it's not looking good for Forest either. Newcastle have won 5 of the last 6, including both matches last season. Ultimately, I'd expect that run to continue here. Don't think it's going to be a high-scoring one, but I would expect Newcastle to come out on top. I missed the team news. No fresh injury concerns for Newcastle. For Forest, Murillo is going to be out again after being taken off just 20 minutes into that game against Midtjylland last night. Like I was saying, expect Newcastle to win this one. I'm going for a 2-0 victory to the Toon. Final 2 o'clock kickoff on Sunday sees bottom club Wolves taking on 10th place Brighton. For Wolves, they finally got their first point in the Premier League last week, and it was almost all 3 if it wasn't for that last-second equaliser from João Paulini for Tottenham at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last week. For Brighton, they ended their horror run at Stamford Bridge with a nice 3-1 victory away to 10-man Chelsea, and it could have been even better if the referees had their heads screwed on properly. Off the back of those games, neither side actually has any fresh concerns coming into this one, so I would expect minimal changes from both, given how well they both played respectively last week. Brighton certainly have the better of the head-to-head record over the past few seasons. They won here last season, and have actually only lost 1 of the last 9 games between Brighton and Wolves. So you would probably have Brighton as the slight favourites for this match. But I actually think over the last few weeks, even though the results haven't been coming in the league, Wolves have been gradually progressing. They've been winning in the Cup. Good result at Spurs last week. I'm expecting them to get at least a draw from this match. And that's what I'm going for. A 1-1 draw for Wolves and Brighton. And then finally, the main event before we head off to an international break sees Brentford host Manchester City. Brentford hosting a Manchester club for the 2nd week running, and they'll be hoping that this fixture goes just as well as last week's did, obviously beating Manchester United 3-1 in rather convincing fashion. For Manchester City, they also beat Manchester United 3-0 just a few weeks ago, and that started a run of 6 games unbeaten, although their winning run did come to an end in midweek with that 2-2 draw to Monaco after a slightly controversial penalty decision. Although you get a shin pad to the face, I would expect a foul to be given. So I don't really know why City are moaning too much about that one. In terms of the team news, no fresh concerns for Brentford. I would thoroughly expect them to name the exact same starting 11 that played against Manchester United last week, which will include James Collins, who somehow wasn't sent off for that penalty incident. For Manchester City, we're likely to see some changes. Pep does tend to rotate from midweek to weekend. We saw that with the game against Monaco in midweek, so I think we'll see some changes from the game in France, but not too many. Unsurprisingly, the head-to-head record is in favour of Manchester City, as most teams' head-to-head records are against Manchester City. It was, though, a 2-2 draw on this ground last season, and games between these two do always tend to be close. I wouldn't rule out any scoreline here, but obviously I am going to go for Manchester City. I do think they're the stronger side. I do think they're the side with slightly more form. The league positions will reflect that as well. I'm going for a 2-1 win to Manchester City. That is going to be it for this video in terms of my predictions. That's going to be it in terms of all of my predictions until the international break gets underway. All that is left to do is show you guys what you have been saying over on the community page for these matches, and they are as followed. Most of you think Bournemouth are going to beat Fulham tonight. Most of you think Spurs are going to go to Leeds and get the win, although a lot of you have gone for a draw. Unsurprisingly, most of you think Arsenal are beating West Ham. Unbelievably, more than 50% still think Man United are going to beat Sunderland. Thank you very much for that confidence boost. Unsurprisingly, Chelsea-Liverpool. 32% think Chelsea, 32% think draw, 36% think Liverpool. If that doesn't tell you how tight of a game that's going to be, I don't know what does. Most of you think Villa are going to beat Burnley. Most of you think Palace are going to go to Everton and get the win, although a fair few of you still think a draw. A lot of you think Newcastle are going to beat Forest. Most of you think Brighton are going to go to Wolves and get the win. And unsurprisingly, most of you think Manchester City are going to beat Brentford away. As always, a massive thank you for watching this video. Let me know all of your thoughts down in the comment section below. Drop a like if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. I will be back with my post-match reaction to Manchester United Sunderland on Saturday. Hopefully, it's going to be a positive one. And then an entire week of daily uploads for international football starting next week. Thank you very much for watching once again. I'll see you very soon.